Hello and welcome to Orbiting Brick, and this is the second part of my crewed mission to Duna. And already starting the video, we're leaving Kerbal orbit. Well, not yet. There's actually going to be a few burns to maximize the use of the O-berth effect. But yeah, if you didn't see the previous video, that shows the construction of this vessel. And okay, so this first burn, I wanted to get the apoapsis right below the inner Van Allen belt because I'm using Kerbalism, and I would like to not microwave my Kerbals. And now, also Kerbalism adds engine reliability, and so after every burn, well, after nearly every burn, I'll have the engineer go out on a EVA to inspect the engine, because if that has a non-repairable malfunction, the crew is dead. Also a beautiful view of Kerbin out the window, and it's time for our second burn, which should start now. And yeah, I added a camera from a Holcam VDS to get that shot, and repair EVA. And again, I'm using Holcam VDS for the first-person view on the Kerbals. And so now this is our final burn around Kerbin. We're now going to be going on an escape trajectory towards Duna. This was, I believe, around 2 minutes long of a burn. And yeah, I actually jettisoned the first 2 sets of drop tanks, and there's the burn complete. And we're now leaving Kerbin. And again, maintenance EVA. And also again, a nice view of Kerbin in the background. Not the best EVAing skills. And that's a really nice view there. Yeah, I really should inspect that engine. If I could stop bumping into random stuff. And yeah, I have to toggle the UI to inspect the engine. And at this point, it needs to be serviced. Which is a bit concerning because we only did 3 burns. And so now I skipped through a bunch of stuff. We've been coasting away from Kerbin for a while now. And this is again just another maintenance EVA to ensure that the engine has remained functional over the course of the coasting phase. Also, I'll just mention this right now. There will still be a third part to this mission. I've tried to make this only 2 parts, but the return to Kerbin was very eventful. And so now, we're approaching Duna. Nice view out the window, possible using a free IVA. Seriously recommend it. It also supports basically all of the major part mods. And again, maintenance EVA. And we continue to approach Duna. And so, in the early planning of this mission, I did consider doing a aero capture. However, it was just simpler to build a tug with the amount of delta V required to insert into orbit using only engine power. And you could see that burn there. And So I ended the burn a bit early, so I actually continue burning at this point, because my orbit would encounter the orbit of Ike and would get ejected from Duna. And again, maintenance EVA. Now, I could have edited most of this out, and even then I've cut down most of the EVA, just exiting the airlock and actually inspecting the engine. And now, again, a beautiful view of Duna through the windows. And so a inclination change, using only RCS to preserve ignitions on the engine, and then igniting the engine again to slow into a circular orbit. And inspection, view of the Mayflower nameplate on the command pod, and another burn to further circularize our orbit, and maintenance EVA. Yeah, there were a lot of these. Also, so Kerbalism, it makes it so that the Kerbal EVA packs use actual monopropellant, and they will take monopropellant from the craft they're exiting. And so, over the course of this, that means I'll burn through most of the monopropellant. Now we switch over to the lander, which has been sitting idle in Duna orbit since the beginning of the previous video, which now will perform a maneuver to a rendezvous with the mothership. And skipping through most of the docking, and you've seen how long this video is, so yeah, most of this had to be skipped through. You can see the craft approaching, and final docking, and with this docking camera being from Holcam VDS. And so now the pilot can transfer through the hatch and enter the lander. And also with free IVA, a bunch of the adapter pieces and the structural pieces have interiors added to them. And I used the Mark II lander can for this design. There's probably there's many ways to design a Duna lander, and well, I'm unsure if this design, it has some flaws. It can't stay on the surface for one Duna day, because it will run out of power on the night side of the planet. And it has most of science experiments, though it doesn't have all of them. And this was a very short stay on the surface, just enough to run the science experiments. We'll actually start to run them as a Kerbalism. Some of the experiments take a long time to run. I believe some of the experiments take several days to run. That's only the surface ones. Some of the orbital ones take years. And also, so in the previous video, during the missions, the light on the ladder of the lander broke, so I have the engineer on EVA to repair that, as well as inspect the other components on the craft. As parts with Kerbalism, their reliability, not only does it depend on how much they're used, but just how much they're out in flight, and how much radiation they're exposed to. And I forgot to mention this, but I had the solar storms turned off for this, though in testing, the craft could protect the crew from radiation by orientating away from the sun, but I turned the solar storms off because that would mean I'd have to stop time warping to reorient the ship, and you cannot time warp faster than 1,000 times during a solar storm, because otherwise your shielding will stop working. And so, inspection seemed to go well. And we're about ready to, we'll go for the landing. So the lander undocks any moment now. And, well, one of the mods I have reduces the force of the docking ports. But yeah, so you saw the two craft flying together, and now the lander can deorbit. And not shown, I transferred some of the fuel in that lower stage for the lander, well, that orbital stage, that it wasn't supposed to have this much fuel, it's just it overbuilt it. I transferred some of the unneeded fuel into the mothership, and those engines just in there were supposed to be used for the deorbit, but weren't necessary. And so now we can perform our re-entry. Now there were actually two attempts at this. The first one, I messed up the final landing approach and fired the engine too late. And you can see that plasma building up on the craft. And re-entry, entry into Duna's atmosphere from this low of an orbit, it's not that significant. There is barely any heating. Really that heat shield on the bottom, and with how much ablator it had, that was kind of unnecessary. But drogue chutes deploy. And pretty soon now we'll jettison the heat shield. Well, first I'll get some views from the crew. And yeah, it's a two-person, two-crew lander. As it would have been, it would have been weird to design a lander with 3 crew capacity. As I feel like the Mark 1-3 command pod, which by the way, that's the, okay. This is a minor rant, but not much is going on. Actually, a significant part of the mission is going on right now. But yeah, I decided to make it a 2-crew lander. And so we're descending to the surface, we jettison the heat shield. And we've activated the engine, which we'll have to fire it to slow down our final descent. Which I've started burning now, though I probably did this a bit too early. Though I did give this lander a very generous delta V margin, as you'll see with how poorly executed the ascent is. And I'm trying to make this a fairly soft landing. However, I'll misjudge my distance to the surface, which looks the way it does because of parallax, which, so parallax by default does not support JNSQ, and I had to find some random configs for it, which, just search for parallax JNSQ on the forums, and I bet you'll be able to find it. But yes, we've landed. We can deploy our science experiments and the solar panel, except there's a important step I forgot to do, which is detaching the parachute modules. So retracting the solar panel, and there we go, the parachute modules. and redeploying the solar panel. And I will just, actually, I'll mention that a bit later. But yes, I put a camera so we could get this view of the first steps on Duna. And most of the time spent designing the lander was spent getting this camera in the right place. And I am serious about that. It took so long to figure out where exactly to mount this camera and how to have the robotic arm swing out so I could get this exact view. But there we go. First steps on Duna. And a view from the Kerbal looking back at the lander. And the second crew member can also get out on EVA. And now, so I believed that the ground experiments from Breaking Ground did not work with Kerbalism. However, I was using the outdated install of Kerbalism, so they might actually work. But yeah, I didn't bring them on this mission. So yeah, you saw the EVA science and planting a flag, and not much else to do, except there is a random feature in the distance, and I wanted to go explore it. EVA packs don't work so well on JNSQ Duna, so it's gonna be a lot of walking. And for that journey over, I just put my microphone on the W key and left my computer for a while. But we finally arrived. At which point, this is one of the Breaking Ground surface features, which requires the scanning arm to get science from. We can't take a sample from it or anything, so all we can do now is just stand on it. Kind of anticlimactic. But yeah, I'm not sure why I'm spending so much time here. I'm just seeing if there's any science I can do here, because I was focused on trying to get as much science from this mission as possible. Not because I needed it. Well, it's actually a career mode save, except I used treats to get basically infinite funds and unlock the tech tree, because otherwise a bunch of my mods would break. But now we can reboard the lander. And so now we can launch after time warping till the mothership is above us. And not the cleanest descent, but the lower state, well, the descent stage didn't explode. And adjusting the drop tanks. So far it's going well. I have those tiny fins on the side to provide some stability, but they're not enough. Yeah, it's kind of spinning out of control. Yeah, I definitely gave this thing a very generous delta V margin if I was able to do that and still complete the mission. So now just plotting the maneuver to get back to orbit. And burning about now. Also, for most of this mission, the stock delta V readouts were completely broken, so I had to rely on Kerbal Engineer Redux. And so the engine works well. It doesn't have a failure, which I was very concerned about that happening, because if it had a permanent malfunction, the crew were stranded. If it had a partial failure, that would still mean I wouldn't have an engine until I was able to get the engineer on EVA. Which is, speaking of EVA, doing that right now to inspect the engine. I did allow myself to use a quick saving and a quick loading. I do that for all my missions. And it was a pretty nominal rendezvous. And so I use quick saves and quick loads. And sometimes with some failures, I don't really have a strict rule for when I can and can't use them. But really just, sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't. And I was going to do my Duna escape burn after a time warping for over 150 days to get to a Duna Kerbal transfer window using the mod transfer window planner. However, I used the stock warp to maneuver, which didn't. It thinks the ship has zero thrust, and so it time warped to during the maneuver, so I had to set for another orbit. But this video is dragging on, so the return will be another video. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and goodbye.